So you've seen examples of how I've built my squads, especially for the end game, but maybe you want to build one for yourself a little bit from scratch? Here's a guide on how you're going to do that. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Unicorn Overlord.
Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of strategy RPGs like Unicorn Overlord, guides such as this, news, gameplay, etc., a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. I have heard your cries, the clamor, the noise, very much appreciated. Feedback is very good for helping me decide what I'm going to do on the channel, but I've heard you all in asking for an overall build guide for endgame units for Unicorn Overlord. I know plenty of people have beaten the game already, but it may prove of interest to you even if you have, and if you have not, well, this is an idea of how you might be able to put together your endgame squads, as this is where a lot of the challenge of the game is going to come together, especially in these last few fights. How do you put a team together that is not only going to survive, but thrive when you're dealing with a large number of enemy units? That's what we're going to talk about today, and the squad that we're going to be featuring for this example is Lex's squad. Technically Octavia's squad right now, but Lex is actually the main leader here, so we're going to make him the leader. I know that might anger some of you Lex haters in the comments, but listen, Lex is my boy, and he's actually a pretty good squad leader, so we're going to talk about what exactly makes this unit tick. So what is the idea here? Well, there's two general types of squads or units that you're going to be using in the end game. Either something that is very laser focused for a particular type of goal, something like, say, you know, my Trinity Rain combo squad, or something that you just want to be able to deal with a variety of different combat scenarios, and that can come in a lot of different flavors. Something like what we have going on here with Lex's unit, or something like Bruno's unit that has a lot of tankiness and then one huge damage dealer with Bruno, or something like Pierre's unit with my cavalry that are meant to have a bunch of damage dealers with a little bit of backline support. There's a lot of ways that you can go about this, but the end goal is to have a unit that can survive a number of different combat scenarios that is not too specific that they're going to get super hard countered, while also being able to deal with dealing damage, taking out enemies, generally being effective at pushing forward, since pushing forward is the most important thing in Unicorn Overlord, with time limits and the like. Since we've talked about some of these other units before, like my cavalry unit and my Bruno unit, I figured Lex's squad as a very much generic all-rounder squad would be the best example to go with, and as such, we are. Looking at it here, there's a few things to take note of. First of all, we have two frontline quote-unquote tanks. Of course, one is a little bit tankier than the other. Lex the Vanguard as a certified tank expert, and Octavia the Wyvern Master, who has some decent survivability options in her kit due to the type of class that she is and the abilities that she has on hand. After our frontliners here, we have an array of backliners for damage and utility. Gerald the Lance Connect for just raw damage output without necessarily being the tankiest unit, so we don't really want him on the front line. Same thing for Batista the Werewolf here, although his goal is to focus down particularly nasty, squishy units and also kind of bring the gas at the end of a fight, since werewolves do tend to get stronger the fewer enemies there are or the less HP they have. And then, of course, Thais the Sainted Knight, who's here primarily to keep the entire squad going while also being able to deal some damage herself. The ultimate goal in any team like this is you need these three things: your tank, your damage, and your support. The combinations that those come in, how many supports you have, how many tanks you have, how many damage dealers you have, that can vary greatly, but these are the three pillars that you want in any major general successful squad, and that's why we're doing this here. Lex, my boy. So, what is the goal of a Vanguard here? Partially, it's to provide arrow cover for our flyer, since we do have a flying ally in this squad who is absolutely going to fold to arrows. Lex is meant to deal with that with his arrow cover. Beyond that, he is meant to stand on the front line, absorb as many hits as possible with his good defensive stats, and deal a modicum of damage in the process. To that end, we have the following gear: the Rosalaris Sword, which gives him a base passive point +1, as well as 30% HP recovery, which is very, very nice, and maxed out physical attack. The White Rider's Shield, one of the best shields that you can give a normal shield, not great shield wielding character. Gives good guard efficiency, good guard rate, physical defense, as well as stun immunity and guard seal immunity, which are key for any frontline tanky defensive unit. The Citadel Guard's Sabatons, giving some physical defense, and the critical guarding impetus skill, which activates after guarding an attack and grants the user +1 AP. This actually gives Lex a deceptive amount of capability when it comes to damage dealing and overall effectiveness. And then, of course, a Lapis Pendant to max out our passive points. As far as our skills are concerned, we have the following. It's very basic. Defender, 75 physical potency, 2 hit count, 100% hit rate. Attack a single enemy, grants the user plus 50% physical defense, and grants the user +1 passive point if the attack hits. With this, we are able to buff our own physical defense, we're able to get even more passive points if we've already guarded an attack, and overall is a very powerful ability. I love Defender. It is the skill that makes Vanguard come alive in the late game. It's actually quite capable, and the damage from it is decent. Like, yeah, you're not going to have the biggest damage around, but it's not bad. Not bad at all. Then we have Shield Bash. Attack a single enemy, inflicts stun. I have this here. I never actually use it on Lex as a Vanguard. Like, you could, but honestly, the times that I ever would are pretty much non-existent, which is why I haven't set up a particular condition to use it. I mainly have it here in case we wind up in an odd situation where guarding impetus is triggered, but only once. So we have 3 AP total. We've already used Defender. We only have 1 AP left over. We want to be able to use that on something. Shield Bash is as good of a use as any. Getting a free stun on something is certainly nice, and it could mean potentially stopping something from getting an attack off entirely, which is pretty awesome. So it's here just as a backup option, but more often than not, we're going to be spamming more Defenders than anything else. Then, of course, we have the guarding impetus from the Citadel Guard's Sabatons. We want this to be triggering as much as possible to get as much AP as possible. Arrow cover for if anything tries to snipe, particularly our Wyvern. This will technically work on anything, but everything else in the squad can generally deal with at least taking 1 hit from an archer. It's really the Wyvern that we got to watch, and this is here for her. And then Quick Guard, if we happen to get attacked directly, Lex can protect himself, which then will also, trigger guarding impetus. So, like, hey, not too bad. Then our second tank, as well as one of our damage dealers here, Octavia, the Wyvern Master, she has the following. She has a Silver Trident Plus, forged, so she's getting as much damage as possible. Gives her +10 accuracy, as well as Lightning Shaker, attacks a row of enemies, and inflicts stun. As a tank and aggro handler, being able to stun a group of enemies to slow them down and let the actual damage dealers in the backline do their work is huge, and it's one of the reasons that I like Wyvern Master so much. They are tanky, they can deal damage, and they also have nice utility through their weapons, such as the Silver Trident. This is an awesome utility piece. Then we have the Undead Ring. It gives poison and death blow immunity, as well as granting an extra passive point, which is super nice. Our Cornelian Pendant for an extra AP, which again, very, very nice. And a Pursuance Bracelet for some extra damage thrown in there when our other attackers are getting in. We have Diving Thrust, targeting Cavalry, allowing us to attack a single enemy. Cavalry targets cannot guard against this attack, and gets +50 potency versus cavalry targets. This is very much a utility piece, not something that we're going to be relying on overly much, but if there is a particularly important cav target, we will hit them with this. Then we have Tempest Drive, targeting a full column. Attack column enemies with a piercing strike. Cavalry targets cannot guard against this attack, and becomes a true strike and critical if the user is below 50% HP. This is something that can come out, and will a lot of the time, and deals very good damage to a column of enemies. Now, the idea here is that as one of our frontline tanks, this will come out only if our own HP is less than 50%. So if we've taken some hits, there's maybe a bunch of fast enemies in the enemy squad, we can strike back really hard. With this, if the enemy is faster than us and they're able to get some damage in, we have the capability to come in, counter, punish, deal a ton of damage, and turn from a tank into a damage dealer, which is generally what you want. The situations where you're going to want 2 full-out tanks, like say maybe a Vanguard and a Legionnaire, 2 Vanguards, whatever, are pretty few and far between. So having a unit that can help in tanking and then turn into a damage dealer with something like Tempest Drive is very, very nice. Speaking of which, what if we don't wind up hitting that threshold where our HP is low enough to use Tempest Drive? That's where Lightning Shaker comes in. This is going to be the bread and butter. This is going to be what you use the most frequently to absolutely punish the enemy. 100 physical potency, 100 magical potency, attack a row of enemies, inflict stun. This is the big one. just being able to get most likely 2 to 3 enemies stunned and have a good chunk of damage on them so that your backline can start cleaning them up is super nice. And with something like, say, a werewolf, where you want enemies to be low, this is a great way to start getting them low, or potentially even finish some off so that your werewolf's damage gets even better. Then we have Pursuit, activates after an ally attacks, follow up a single enemy, just more free damage in there, and then Deflect to help with our tanking. This activates before being hit by a melee attack, negates melee damage for a single hit, and grants the user plus 20 evasion. This leans into the idea that as a flying unit, Wyvern Masters are generally going to be pretty dodgy against enemy frontliners, because most of the time they're going to be infantry, grounded, etc. So you're going to be dodging a lot of attacks. But if you are going to get hit, Deflect comes in, blocks that attack, gives you even more evasion, so it's even less likely that it has to trigger in the future. This is a great option. I love having an off-tank like a Wyvern Master that can handle the job, maybe not as good as a dedicated tank, but enough that then they'll still have the HP and the points left over after absorbing a couple of hits to come in swinging and help the team out with even more damage. It's a great setup. You have good options for this, like things with, Griffin Master, potentially even rogues, werefoxes, stuff like that. It's very, very nice. And of course, as a flyer, you can have her as a co-leader, so that if you need to be able to fly over terrain, you can switch to her being the leader, and then you can navigate around all that nasty terrain that would otherwise get in the way, which is awesome. Of course, Lex is going to stay as the leader for now. The reason I like to have Lex as the leader primarily is as infantry, he gets 6 stamina, so this squad is going to be able to fight for a very good amount of time. And you have the resist ranged assist skill, which is not only going to protect your Wyvern, since, ranged assists are going to deal bonus damage to flyers anyway, but as one of your frontline units is going to be absorbing a lot of hits, there's a good chance that these are the guys who are going to be targeted first by any ranged assist enemies on the battlefield, of which there are likely going to be a lot, and this is going to help protect you from that damage significantly. Now, for our backline, we have to talk about Gerald the Lance Connect. If you know me, you know I love my sellswords, I love my Lance Connects. I know there's going to be people who try to roast me for the pronunciation in the comments. I've gotten so much feedback about how to say it, how to not say it, how you can't say it in English, etc., etc. I don't care anymore. I'm saying Lance Connect. Come at me if you want. The idea here is just deal damage. That is what Lance Connects do, and they do it very, very well. We're set up with a basic steel sword. You can put any stronger sword in here, like sort by physical attack and find the best thing, toss a great sword on there, whatever you want. It's just what I happen to have available for this squad at the time. The higher the physical attack, the better, and if you have some bonus effects in there, all the better. I have an Azure Crest Shield Plus for the maxed out physical defense, guard rate, guard efficiency, passive points, whatever utility shield you would want on something like this in the backline, since they're not going to be tanking overly much, is also totally fine. If you want them to have blindness immunity, self-healing, whatever, pick what you like if they are able to wield a shield. Then, Wolfpack Gauntlets gives us the Wolfpack skill. Activates at the start of a battle. Grants plus 20% physical attack to all allies, which is what everyone in this squad cares about, and gives plus 50% critical rate to bestial targets. Funny enough, we have one of those. Finally, Knight's Medallion. Physical defense plus 2, physical defense plus 10%, guard rate plus 10%. This is just an I'm paranoid option, because I hate when my backline gets blown up unexpectedly, and that my Lance Connect does like having a little bit of extra defensive measures. If you want to go all in on something physical, that is totally fine. Toss something like a beret on here. Toss something like, I don't know, whatever you want. Some extra Carnelians or something else that's going to boost your physical attack. Maybe a Veteran's Eye Patch for some crit rate. Whatever makes you happy. Totally fine. It depends entirely on what the unit is trying to do and what the class in question wants to do. For our damage, Bastard's Cross. Highest HP. Attack a single enemy. Potency increases based on the target's HP. Maximum increase plus 60. This is the powerhouse. This is going to chunk real hard, especially with the buffs that you're getting from things like Wolfpack Gauntlets. This is really, really nice. I cannot overstate how strong it is. You're going to chunk something. Then we have Killing Chain if we happen to wind up in the situation where we need it just to be able to deal some extra damage to something. Not going to happen in the majority of cases. Wolfpack, again, we're getting that damage buff for the entire team. This is awesome, and it leaves us with a passive point left over for following Slash. Counterattack a single enemy, grants the user +1 passive point if the attack hits. So as we start to get attacked and our tanks are either dodging, taking hits, whatever, we're getting in there, dealing damage, getting the passive point back, and then continuing on from there. Next, Batista the Werewolf. Again, damage dealer. Vorpal Sword, Carnelian Pendant for the extra AP, Green Beret and Veteran's Eye Patch for even more damage, either in just pure damage or crit rate. Very simple stuff here. We got Wild Fang to attack a row of enemies. Potency increases the less HP a target has. Maximum increase +50. And Decimate, attack a single enemy. Potency increases the fewer enemies there are. Maximum increase +100. Then we have Killing Pursuit. Activates after an ally attacks. Follow-up attack a single enemy. Grants the user +1 AP if the target is defeated. And Bestial Howl. Activates before attacking with an active skill. Grants allies in the user's row +15% physical attack. So, between this and the Wolfpack Gauntlets, our team is going to be slapping. Batista is going first. He's going to weaken the front line of the enemy with Wild Fang, buff the allies' attacks, get in there to decimate something near the end of the fight. It's very solid stuff. Very simple, but very solid stuff. And finally, Thais, who's a combo damage dealer and support in this setup. She also has a Vorpal Sword for as much physical attack as possible, Templar's Shield for extra guard efficiency, HP recovery, etc. A Lapis Pendant, so she can use more of her support abilities, which is very important, and Cloth Gauntlets, so that if something happens to try to poke through on Lex, namely a spear that's going to deal bonus damage to Thais, she's able to guard it more efficiently and to take less damage. She then set up with Saint's Blade, attack a single enemy, +25 potency if the user's at 100% HP, and grants the user +1 passive point if the attack hits. This is a purely physical potency attack, and yes, while people do generally like to give magical swords to Sainted Knights to make use of their good magical attack, which I'm fully on board with, I prefer to make sure that my Sainted Knight has enough passive points to keep tossing out shields, heals, etc. And Saint's Blade is what's going to allow us to do that. Then we have row heal. We're only going to use that Saint's Blade the first time, and from here we're going to just toss out heals for the front row, the back row, etc. If you want to be a little bit spicy, then you could add a second row heal here with the condition of 50% HP. This way you could make sure that like you're maybe only going to heal in certain scenarios, but like I found that 95% of the time having target HP is less than 75% is fine. Row Barrier, if we happen to get attacked by magical attack, we can block it. Holy Guard, if we get hit by an attack, we can guard it. And then Magic Barrier, if a particular ally is hit by a magic attack, you can guard them as well. The very solid setup that allows us to deal physical damage still. I love it a lot. Now, how does this help you to build your own endgame squad? This is an example type of unit. We've gone through the tanks, we've gone through the damage dealers, we've gone through the support, and we've talked about how some of those roles are pulling double duty. Something like our Wyvern Master here, dealing both damage and being a tank. Our Sainted Knight, dealing damage and being support. Wherever you can achieve that, you should. Yes, there's going to be scenarios where you have something like a Druid that is dealing basically no damage outside of very specific setups and scenarios, but her support is going to be worth it. In most cases, though, you want everyone to be able to deal damage. That's where you wind up having situations where you like to have Vanguard over Legionnaire, for example. Legionnaires, or their equivalents, they have absolutely abysmal damage dealing. They're great defensively, but sometimes you want to have a mix of both. That's where the Vanguard comes in. That type of good thing. Use this type of formula. Does it have to follow these numbers exactly? No. Again, as I mentioned, we could look at something like my cavalry squad. We've got 3 primary damage dealers and then 2 characters in the back that deal literally 0 damage in a druid and a bishop. 1 for healing, 1 for enemy debuffs. But that's fine. You've got your support. You've got technically tanks in the cavalry, but realistically you've got another support that makes them tankier by debuffing the enemy. Looking at Bruno's squad, same type of thing. We've got our primary damage dealer in Bruno, we've got a tank in Uriel, and then we've got support in the backline from a druid and a rogue, as well as a kind of mix of support and damage dealing from an elven fencer. You can see the archetypes at play here. If you aren't doing something super focused like a super heavy cavalry squad or a super focused like combo Trinity Reign squad, then you're going to want some more general use all-rounders here. And that's what I want to impart upon you. You don't have to have this exact formation copied. It's the philosophy behind it that you want to utilize. and I hope this has helped you to do so. With that said, do let me know. Did this make sense to you? What changes would you make? What is your personal philosophy for building endgame units, no matter what the difficulty mode that you happen to be on? I would love to hear about it all, and I'm sure there will be people in the comments who find it interesting, or if they're still playing through the game, very helpful. With that said, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I do hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.